Hello. Um, you might notice I'm by myself. That is because George is running late. He will be here, but he's running late. The good news is that last week, going to the concert, I got almost 45 minutes of concert footage all put together for you guys to watch. I usually save this for the end of this stream, but I'm gonna play it at the beginning. And the good news is we will end with the album ranking and the live portion. So we're gonna go ahead and do the concert footage opening this, and then we'll follow up with any afterthoughts we've had, and our album rankings, what albums we're ranking, and how we're ranking them. So yeah, just stay tuned and enjoy. We're here at Kemba Live. This is probably after the album ranking, but we haven't done it yet. But
we've teleported. We'll do that.
We're time traveling, guys.
Or we have done that.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? But we're right before the venue. I'm excited. This should be fun.
I am too.
I really like Fornt Line Assembly, and then I love Gary Numan, and then Ministry's really fucking good too.
Yeah. Is this your first Ministry?
Yeah, it's my first for all three.
And this is my first for Gary Newman and Fornt Line Assembly.
Nice.
So I think this is my third time for Ministry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
You're just showing off.
It's been a long stretch of time. I think I saw them first 20 years ago. So, yeah.
Any stuff you're looking most forward to hearing?
I know what to expect with Ministry, and I'm sure it'll be a great show. But I'm really looking forward to Gary Newman. I'm looking forward to songs that I know and songs that I don't know.
Yeah.
And likewise with Fornt Line. There's a lot of their material that I know and a lot that I don't know. So I'm usually with concerts, it's a great opportunity to learn some new songs and hear a song and like, hey, I really like that. Let me look it up later and see what album it's on. And and it's good that we're doing this before the album rankings. I might be prompted to check something out that I can talk about during.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Opium for the Masses, I literally just listened to earlier today, and that was the new Ministry one. It's pretty good. I like it. I think Ministry's doing better the past couple albums than they have been. And then, I pretty much like all of Gary Numan, but I haven't listened to it all.
Same.
But yeah. And then Fornt Line I like as well, although they're definitely my third favorite of these three. But if I were to pick like songs, Take the Mystery to Bed is one that's kind of addicted to recently.
That's a good track.
I doubt Gary will do it. I think we'll definitely get Cars.
We'll get Cars.
And then probably of his newer stuff, he'll probably do, what is it? My Name is Ruin, because that was the biggest one of his newer stuff.
I have not heard some of the newer stuff.
That
wouldn't be new to me. So.
He'll probably do Intruder as well, because that's his latest album. I would love to hear Love and Napalm, which is that's like his first album when he did like the darker turn. Although I don't know, it's tough to judge because his albums there's a darkness that kind of slowly creeps in as they go when you're listening to him. So it's tough to judge exactly. It's off Sacrifice, and he talks about how that album was largely inspired by Faith and Devotion. That was the album he was talking about.
Oh, Depeche Mode.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be something I'd love. Ministry, I really liked Victim of a Clown off Amerikkkant. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Of the older stuff, obviously, I'd love Burning Inside. I could live without Jesus Built My Hot Rod, but I mean, there's probably. I'm a
diehard '80s Ministry fan.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I would love? They won't do this. Hezbollah. It has just a weird, funky little track off Land Rape and Honey that I love.
Fun fact, that's actually a 1984 song that they played during the synth pop days as like kind of
I can see that
as an opener. It was still an instrumental back then. See, like I have all sorts of useless trivia about 80s Ministry.
Works for me.
But and like there is an 80s Ministry song that they played on the 84 tour. In the Twitch tour, I think, called Ricky's Hand, which is a Fad Gadget cover. So they made they made a proper studio version for this album.
Yeah,
so.
it's a new track now, even though it's an old track.
Yeah, the cover version has existed for about 40 years, but they've properly recorded it for an album.
So solid chance we'll get that.
It's a new old song.
Yeah.
So probably not a lot of the early year stuff. They're going to do a separate revisit for that. Maybe next year, and then they're going to do another one with Paul Barker. So I'd like to check those shows out too, because those would be special shows to go to. So this one, new album is fine. I mean, you know, like 80s is my favorite, then 90s Ministry is a really close second. But some of the 2000s stuff, it's like still some enjoyable stuff, but others, it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, this is modern Ministry. I don't dislike it. It's fun.
I'll be honest, like I kind of agree. Like if I were picking eras, it'd probably be 80s and then 90s, and then probably the newer stuff. But like, Beer to Eternity to 2000-ish, I want to say, kind of blurs together a lot for me. There's some good stuff in there, but like it's
me too. Me too.
It's not highlights in my opinion.
I'm glad that they're still making music, and
absolutely,
it is fun. But I'm mostly looking forward to hearing some Front Line that I haven't heard, and some Gary Numan, and maybe digging a little deeper into those.
I mean, you can probably tell by the way I phrased it. Gary Numan is my favorite of the three, but Ministry's really good too.
If this was the early Ministry tour that they'll be doing next year, without a doubt, it would have been that. If that would have been my yes, let's do this. But it's it's fine. I'm still excited for this.
We got 3 really great acts.
Yeah.
Let's go get
let's do it.
spots.
We will be back, and we will let you know. Doo-doo-doo.
Now, right
try to hold the camera this time. We'll see how this goes. But we just got out.
We did. Ooh, I'm tired.
Oh my God.
Lots of energy tonight.
Yes. Not a whole lot of Yes representation. I wore my Yes shirt and nobody...
You did. I didn't see.
Oh, it's sad. I thought Yes would love Ministry. It's very sad.
Oh, well. But yeah,
I guess...
Frontline played about
Front
a half
Line.
hour.
Yeah, they did about a half hour. If I had a critique, I would say... I'm hoping he's okay. The front man seemed a little out of it.
Yeah.
He didn't seem as high energy. The guitarist was super high energy, though. He was carrying a lot of it. And sonically, they sounded fantastic.
The mix overall got better as the show went on. Like, Ministry sounded tight. Mix-wise, performance-wise.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously, they're the headliner, so they're the primary.
Gary Numan put on a fantastic show. A lot of energy. Dude. My only complaint was his vocals were mixed a little too low.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. So, Gary, like, especially for the first couple tracks, there was something up with the mix. And I don't know if I record any of it, but if you look over, you can see the one guitarist trying to tell the mixer to fix it, essentially. Yeah. He's like, guys, it's not right.
But when you got to Ministry, like, Al's vocals were, like, exactly where they needed to
Ministry was perfect, sonically. So, before we get to Ministry, though, I just want to say Gary was, like, super high energy because I don't know about age-wise. He's probably the oldest of the ones up there.
I would say he's the oldest.
Probably. I mean, he's definitely been around the longest.
He's in great shape though, and
dude, he's super high energy.
He looks like he's still in his 20s.
He is running around the stage. He is doing great. Yeah, shit, and I think he put on a great show.
Yeah.
Honestly, all three of them did a great show. Ministry, like, so. My biggest complaint about Ministry was actually the crowd. Because Frontline got a little rowdy, but it wasn't too bad. Gary, there was more people for Gary than for Frontline, but Gary's crowd was, like, fantastic. Like, everybody's just there jamming, enjoying the music. And then Ministry got really fucking rowdy. I kept on getting pushed around. 99% of the time when I looked around to see who was pushing me around was that fucking yellow shirt guy.
That guy was obnoxious.
Oh my God.
But there's another guy in front of me that I think was a little tipsy because anytime someone cut into him, like, he would, like, back thrust me really hard.
Yeah.
He wasn't, like, trying to mosh or anything. He was just, just a little tipsy, I think.
And then, there was that moment where Al, apparently, I don't know how he knew, but apparently there was a Nazi or something in the crowd, and he was just...
I don't know
he was
what
just
that
like,
was about.
You right-wing assholes, I'm done with you. I mean, all due respect to calling him out, because he's like, you guys are bullies until you get called out, and apparently, I didn't see it, but apparently security rushed in and yanked him out or something. I did not see it at all. But... I mean, security at these places is usually pretty impressive.
I mean, good for him for calling it out.
Exactly.
They could have been there for one of the other two shows. I mean, it's pretty common knowledge by now that Ministry is not a right-wing supporter.
No. I mean, dude, like, there was a backing track on that one. I don't remember. I knew the song when it was playing. But the backing track was literally just like, it was Nazis, MAGA, the Klan, Confederates, and clowns. And it's like, he's not being veiled here. He's calling everybody here clowns. He's calling... and, honestly, good on him. I'm all for that type of thing. But yeah, Al did a good job. I'm trying to think, like, the set list, like, the first half was all stuff from the last two albums, I want to say.
Yeah.
It was all Moral Hygiene and Hopium, which I'm less familiar with. I like them, but I'm less familiar with them.
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah, no, I enjoy them. And then he started doing the older stuff, starting with New World Order, and then Stigmata, yes. And I'm brain farting. Thieves, he definitely did Thieves.
We got the three big singles from Psalm 69, and then the three big singles from Mind.
He definitely did Jesus Built My Hot Rod, which, I enjoy that song, but it's never been one of my favorite Ministry songs.
It might be their most popular
I'm on 99% sure it is their most popular song.
Because it was like a huge 12-inch single when it first came out. Like, I think it surpassed Madonna or something like that.
No, I know Psalm 69 is their most successful album. And, I like it. It's not one of my favorites, but I did like it quite a bit. It's Mind is a Terrible Thing. Taste is the correct answer. Just saying.
I would say Land of Rape and Honey. That's the correct answer.
Land of Rape and Honey is definitely high up there and better than Psalm 69. I will definitely say that. But yeah, overall, a very good show. Like I said, my biggest issue was the Ministry crowd was getting rowdy. There's a couple moments where I was just like, George, do you want to leave the floor? Because
I considered it.
Yeah, I was just like, this is ridiculous. These people are obnoxious.
Yeah. A lot of people were drunk too. There was another girl that was like screaming random nonsense at the top of her lungs.
That sucked, but I can handle that. I can't handle the guys just pushing everybody around and being assholes. I cannot handle that.
So,
but overall, it was a good show.
Yeah,
had fun.
All the bands were great. I have some Gary Numan to check out because there were several songs that I heard throughout the night that I really liked.
Yeah, it was mostly new stuff. I want to say his only like 80s songs, I want to say were Metal and Cars.
Yeah.
Which were fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Of the I posted like 12 songs I'd love to hear. I think I heard 3 of them all night. So
still got to hear some.
I think it was one per band. I got Plasticity from Fornt Line Assembly. Okay. I got Cars from Gary Numan, and then I got Burning Inside from Ministry. Which I almost didn't get. I almost got none of Ministry, but they did Burning Inside for the encore.
I kind of wanted to hear Ricky's Hand, but they did play.
Yeah,
they did play. So
I wouldn't
What.
mind hearing that.
So What was a surprise. I don't think that's been.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a regular in the set list, so that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, they did hit the new one a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ricky's Hand would have been nice. I did enjoy that one. That was a good album closer. But yeah, good show. I am tired as fuck.
Me too.
We will see. I think probably our next show is going to be Kraftwerk, which you're really familiar with, or at least somewhat familiar with.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with
and I'm kind of blind. I put on one of their albums earlier today, and I liked it. And I said, okay, let's go for this. Let's check this out. So that should be fun. I've heard Kraftwerk is an American band, right?
Yes, they're from Georgia.
Yes. But yeah, that should be fun.
I'd love to do if they do a formal early Ministry tour next year, I'd be down for going to that.
Yeah, definitely early Ministry.
Yeah, they're going to be doing that at the Cruel World Festival.
They need to do
May, and then
pure synth pop.
I don't think it would be pure synth pop. I think there would be more synth in it, but that would be fun to see. So if they come back to Columbus with that set, I might want to go back and see it.
We were telling him to play I'm an Effigy, and I don't think he heard. It's like, come on, dude. Come on. Should have known better, Al. Should have known better.
I think Effigy is part of the set list for the next.
Oh, probably. Because, I mean, the next album's going to be redoing with Sympathy.
Yeah, I'd imagine they're going to put some songs in there from Twitch and then some of the Wax Trax era stuff for sure.
There's lots of Lost Air stuff in that, too.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do Ricky's Hand then.
They could. That technically is an early cut for them, so yeah. That would be cool.
Looking forward to it. So,
yeah,
this will probably be the end of the podcast. So, party on and be excellent to each other.
Yes. Now we're going to get sleep.
So I lied. It wasn't the end of the podcast. It's the beginning part. And hi, George.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah.
Well rested.
You sound very echoey.
All right. Let me go ahead and adjust some sound settings here, and we'll see if we get this working a little better.
It's a disadvantage to
We've had some of these
flip in the order, but it works.
Does that sound any better?
Oh, you seem a little. It's a little quiet, and
How about now? Do I sound any less echoey?
maybe a little less echoey. I don't know. You're getting a lot of trash can effect. I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it.
All right. Can we hear me now?
I can hear you, just a little quiet.
I cannot hear anybody at the moment.
Oh,
Everyone
can you not hear me?
see and hear you. All right, 1 second.
All right. So while George is figuring that out, No, we were not in Chicago. We were in Columbus. It was a Kemba Live. My first time at the venue. It was a pretty nice venue for I didn't know what to expect. So, yeah, I didn't know what to expect. But yeah, it was a nice venue. Apparently there's like seating over it. And I was looking it up, and apparently the seating is like the surcharge stuff, but then you can just be like on the floor for like the cheaper price. You know, it is what it is. But like overall, I thought it was a very, very good venue, and Kraftwerk is apparently going to be there as well. So I'm gonna go to never going to Kemba Live to doing it twice in a row, which hey, cool. You know, good fun, good fun. But yeah, towards the end of that video, you kind of saw me talk about how the crowd got kind of rough, and here I pulled up this video. Here, let me go ahead and mute it because we don't really need the audio. Like you can kind of see, like when you're looking at the bottom half of the screen, you can kind of see how the crowd is like all over the place, just jumping around. And just FYI, I'm feeling too old for this. It's a bit much. Let's see how George is doing. How you doing, George? Oh, I don't know. I don't think we have George yet. I can't hear you, George. Well, here. And in case you guys are wondering, the yellow shirt guy we were talking about. We don't need a volume. But like when you see the arm just all over the place here, that is the yellow shirt guy. Yeah, there's the yellow shirt guy. I loved how he would cross his arms right in front of the camera. That was pretty awesome. But yeah, then just partway through the show, he just like, well, partway through that song, I want to say he just pushed his way straight up front, and I was just like, oh, thank God, that was a bit much. Let me see. Are you ready, George?
All right. Give me a thumbs up.
Oh, you sound better.
I might have to leave and come back.
Oh, can you not hear me?
So.
You do sound better.
All right, one sec. Let me leave.
Talking to myself. Let's see. So we will be ranking. I think I put the album list in. Right. Know my list. I think I put the album list that we'd be covering in the description. But oh.
All right. Can you see
okay.
me?
Yeah, no, we could always see you. The
having some weird audio issues. Am I still kind of?
You sound a lot better right now, though.
Excellent. Well, apologies for.
And you can hear me, so.
Yes. All right, we're back.
All right. So we picked to rank. We were going to do 4 Fornt Line Assembly albums, and then we did 7 Gary Numan albums and 7 Ministry albums. And then we'll go through the bands one by one. And the Fornt Line Assembly albums we'll rank will be Caustic Grip, Tactical Neural Implant, Echogenetic, and Up the Coma. And then for Gary Numan, we're cheating a little bit because it's not completely Gary Numan, because we're actually with Gary Numan doing the entire Tubeway Army discography, because it's completely different than Gary Numan solo. It's a different
2 albums.
Yeah. Which technically is kind of the same because Gary Numan essentially it was all the same thing. Just Gary Numan decided to stop using the band name and just start going by his own name. But like, it was all the same people recording on Pleasure Principle as it was on Replicas.
Yeah.
But that will be the self-titled Tubeway Army, Replicas, Pleasure Principle, Telekon, I Assassin, Sacrifice, and Savage. And then for Ministry, we'll be doing With Sympathy. Wow. 12-inch singles, Twitch, Land of Rape and Honey, Mine's a Terrible Thing Taste, Psalm 69, and Amerikkkant. And yeah, and first thing I want to say is I enjoyed all these albums to a degree. I think there's really good stuff in all these albums. I don't think there's any duds in this list. I just want to get that out of the way real fast. I guess, George, anything you want to say before we dive in and start doing the Fornt Line Assembly?
Yeah, I mean, this was fun. All three of these bands I've liked to some capacity since high school. Probably Ministry more than the others, but you know, I have had greatest hits CDs for Gary Numan and Fornt Line Assembly. So there's a lot of material here that a lot of it I knew, but a lot of it I didn't know. So it was kind of cool to take a deep dive and check out some of their newer stuff or some stuff in the middle that I hadn't heard yet. So you get to a certain point where there's so many albums by, you know, the groups that you like.
Yeah.
I'm sure for you, Bob, you know, I knew all the Ministries, but they're going into a band 16 albums deep can be quite a challenge. So
yes.
So this was a good exercise, I think.
Yeah. Between these two, the one I was most familiar with was definitely Gary Numan. I probably had like half a dozen Gary Numan albums, which isn't remotely all of them. And by the way, now I've heard all of them, which is kind of cool. But yeah, he has the most prolific of the discographies of these guys. Although Ministry's not super far behind. Although now I think Fornt Line's not super far behind either. But they're definitely the newer of the three.
Yeah, the 80s Ministry albums are quite different from each other. We'll get to that. But once they kind of got it, you know, into like Psalm 69 and forward, they kind of settled on a sound. Still things here and there, but yeah, Fornt Line was more experimental in their early years, and again, they found a sound. So yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then okay, well, are you ready to start ranking?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so
like always, I have some select records that I can show.
All right. Well, I have album covers on here to show too. So
cool.
I'm cheating. I'm doing the digital versions, but so I want to stress that like when I did my ranking, I did all these together. So this was not the last on my list, but this is the last for my Fornt Line Assembly one, and it is actually your pick, George. It was a Caustic Grip. I did enjoy this one quite a bit. I just enjoyed the other ones a bit more. It was kind of just that simple. But let's see. I know when it went to like listening to Fornt Line, because Fornt Line's still the one band on here that I haven't listened to everything, but I've maybe done like 10 of their albums at this point. And I like them when they find their sound kind of and start rolling with that. And I thought some of the early stuff could get a little rough, and I thought Caustic Grip was one of the better ones for that. I feel like they're kind of solidifying kind of somewhat in their sound at that point, but it's not quite found yet. But yeah, of the four, this one grabbed me the least. But yeah, I still like it quite a bit.
Cool.
Yeah. So what was your number 4 for Fornt Line, George?
My number 4 is Wake Up the Coma.
All right.
So this one I liked quite a bit. And this is one that I had not heard previously. I was more familiar with some of their 80s, early 90s things. So there's a whole section of albums that I had just missed over the years. So 2 on the list, this one, Wake Up the Coma, and Echogenetic, I had not heard, previously. But of the 4, 2 of them I was already quite familiar with. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the ranking, just how familiar I've been with things over the years and things that certain songs that I like. But no, I really enjoyed this one. I feel the sound of this album was done better on my other pick from this era of the band. But we'll get into that. But yeah, I really dug their cover of Rock Me Amadeus.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for Falco. I
am too. I have several Falco albums. They're fun. Negative Territory was also a very cool track. And then looking at my notes here, Splitting Wind, the closing track, was also really good. And I saw that Chris Connolly did vocals on that. And kind of a Ministry tie-in. He was kind of part of the band here and there in Ministry, starting with the Mind album and the Mind tour. He actually, on the album, you probably couldn't tell, but he is the lead vocalist for So What, the album version.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he kind of has his Ministry voice, and then he has his natural singing voice is kind of like more of a Bowie-esque kind of voice. But he's also the prominent singer in some of the Revolting Cocks material, which is kind of the alter ego of Ministry, kind of a little bit more disco-y, kind of with Sympathy if you took it out to like a demented disco and added the distortion on there. So, we might get into that in a different video, but getting back to this one, yes, some songs on this are really good. It just didn't grab me. And I'll probably talk more about Front Line as a band as we go along, but yeah.
No, you're definitely more familiar with them than I am. I just know him as a Skinny Puppy side project. Well, I guess not.
Oh, so you did know that already. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, no, I did know that. Yes.
Bill Lieb was part of Skinny Puppy during the Bites era, so he kind of helped Kevin Key come up with some of the tracks, and then he was also a touring keyboardist, and then he split right after Bites and kind of went off to do his own project, which is Frontline. And again, more experimental. They got more into like the dancey EBM territory as they went along, and then eventually they got into more of the guitar samples and kind of like where they're at now. But yeah. Bob, would you like to go on to your number 3 for Frontline?
Yeah, I guess we could go that way.
Okay.
My number 3 was this one, Echogenetic. This one's really good. Like, again, like I like all these, and this one was really good. I feel like this was the pick for their best-selling album, I believe.
This is their best-selling?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, their best-selling
cool.
is this one. Their highest reviewed was Tactical Neural Implant, and their best-selling is Echogenetic.
Cool. Okay.
And I don't remember if it was a tie or not, because I know with Gary Numan, his best-selling and his highest rated were the same. So I just went with his second highest rated for his highest rated, and then his best-selling. And when we get to it, it'll be obvious which ones those are. But yes. But yeah, this was their best-selling one. And this one definitely, like, this is almost like one where I heard it, I was like, okay, if I wanted to, like, if someone was interested in Fornt Line Assembly and I wanted to just hand them an album to, expose them in Fornt Line Assembly, this would probably be the good one to give them, because it's like, this felt like just like kind of their sound, almost like they're not really like, I don't want to say they're not experimenting, but like this is just their sound just done really, really well. And it really worked quite well for me. Let me dig up the track list on this one. I mean, if I can find it, there it is. Okay. Okay, yeah, some of my favorites ones I have on here are Killing Grounds, which we heard live, and Deaden, which we also heard live. I also have Blood on here. This one, those were all really good tracks. So yeah, this was a good one. And George, why don't you go ahead and do your number 3?
Number 3, I went with a Tactical Neural Implant. This was one that I was familiar with.
over the years, like a lot of people said this was their favorite, at least from the time frame that I was most familiar with them, which would have been their 80s and 90s material. Apart from the singles, there are some cool tracks on here. I mean, the singles were The Blade, Mind Phaser, which we did here at the show. I love Mind Phaser. And then Lifeline was another cool song. But yeah, half of it kind of grabbed me. The other half didn't. But this is one of those albums in the industrial community that a lot of people would not shut up over. And I don't know if that goes into how I personally rank it. Like when you listen to like, oh, it has to be awesome, right? Everyone is just talking about it, and you sit down and you listen to it and you're like, okay, this is some good tracks on here, but it just kind of sounds average. So I'm just
I'll go ahead and jump ahead a little bit, but we can cross over a bit because this is my number 2. But yeah, this is one that I really I liked it, but like I didn't have that like the community like praising it up. All I saw was essentially like I went to Frontline kind of knowing a couple of their songs, but I didn't know any of their albums going into this. So like I didn't know anybody really outside maybe you anybody really talk about Frontline Assembly too much to me, so I wasn't too familiar with them. So I went in this, and this one took a couple listens for me to get into because I listened to all of these albums 3 times over the past couple months just to give myself a firm feel of them. And the first 2 times I listened to this, it didn't thrill me, and then the third time it kind of clicked for me. I think that kicked it up a spot for me because Echogenetic used to be here, but yeah, last time I heard it, it really worked for me. Maybe next time I hear it, it'll go down, but maybe it'll go up too. But yeah, this is just one that was quite good. And you brought up Mind Phaser.
Yeah, Mind Phaser
is a really good
big
one.
single.
Yeah, I have a whole So like I have Final Impact, Mind Phaser, Remorse, Biomechanic, Outcast, Gun, Lifeline is all songs I really liked. So that's a decent chunk of the album. But yeah, this is like I said, this one took a couple of listens like fairly close, like within a couple months. Like I really enjoyed all these albums. I am taking a little break from them. But yeah, this one it grew on me like every time I listened to it. It kind of clicked. So it ended up at my number 2 when all this settled. But yes. What's your number 2, George?
Echogenetic is my number 2. And this was one that I was pleasantly surprised by. Because I have sampled a lot of their work over the years. I'm like, yeah, Frontline Assembly. Yeah, cool. Not going too far out of my way to really listen to a lot of it. Like I said, I had their greatest hits CD for a long time. And I've been picking up some of their 12-inch singles, which I might show here shortly. But listen to this one. I'm like, oh, this was like a pleasant surprise. It's a lot more melody here. Like the other album too. Like I really appreciate Bill Lieb getting into more of like a natural singing voice too. Which is different because a lot of the early years is just his traditional kind of low baritone, but it kind of has kind of like the shout kind of chanting type vocals. But here we there's a lot of melody, and the songs kind of develop a little differently than how they would hear in a typical Frontline Assembly album. So, and they're catchy too. So when you just said this was their best-selling album, I could have sworn it was Caustic Grip, but that just shows how much of out of the loop I've been with the band over the years.
Yeah,
but this is I'm looking forward to listening to this one again.
Yeah, for sure. So this one's gonna be a bit different. Of course, I'd be interested to see. Maybe sometime we'll do a full ranking and figure out where exactly we lie. But my number 1 was this guy, Wake Up the Coma, and it's not my number 1 favorite Frontline Assembly album, but I kind of chose it for this list because we didn't have anything like newer. and this one I want to say it's 2019. I don't know if it's their newest, but it's one of their newer ones. But it's also kind of I listened a bit more to Frontline when like the algorithm suggested to me their cover of Rock Me Amadeus. I think it was probably when I was listening to Falco, and I went, "Oh, I know Frontline Assembly. I'll listen to this." So I got familiar with this album because I was like, "Okay, I'll check out this album." So this is so I checked this out fairly early when it came out. This is probably one of the only Frontline Assembly albums I was somewhat familiar with going into this. And that's probably why it's so high on this list. Now, I will say, when I dove into them, trying to figure out what albums I wanted, this wasn't my number one pick. But like I said, I chose it just because it's from a newer era, and I wanted to get something newer in there. Artificial Soldier is still my favorite. But this one is, I don't know, it just hits me. And it's probably, I'll be blunt, it's probably just an emotional connection, but I don't know, for me that's a lot of what music is. I'm close to it. I like it. But yeah, I know there's a couple other tracks on here, like the title track, Wake Up the Coma. It's really cool too. Let's see, what tracks do I have on here? Okay, so the ones I have on here are Beat. I'm slaughtering that. Have It All, Proximity, Living a Lie, Wake Up the Coma, Structures, Spitting Wind are all ones I have liked. So and that it looks like Spitting the Wind is the one with the Chris
Connolly.
I don't know. Yeah, Chris
Chris
Connolly.
Connolly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is just one I'm close to. Yeah. Yes, it is. I'm gonna guess your number one, George.
Caustic Grip. And a story that I might tell throughout this video too is, especially when we get into ministry, is when I had my first car back in college. You remember the white station wagon? Had a tape player. I won an auction on eBay. I got like 12 cassettes ranging from new wave, industrial, some post-punk goth stuff. It's like, oh yeah, a lot of this stuff seems up my alley. So this cassette was in there. So this was the first one that I heard. You know, when you only have a tape player in your car, you have a rotation of so many cassettes that you listen to back and forth. So, you know, this is one that I listened to like a lot going to college, even when we were hanging out, Bob. You may have heard this in the car at one time or another.
Probably. I mean,
so
you knew me. I was making all those mixtapes and stuff because I had a cassette player too.
So, yeah, and this eventually, like, hey, these guys are cool. I picked up their greatest hits CD, which I think covered everything from. I don't know if this was their first release on Wax Trax. I know they had a lot of demos and self-released albums prior to being on Wax Trax, which was also the label that had the early Ministry and KMFDM, Coil, a lot of, you know, the mid 80s to mid 90s kind of industrial. But yeah, this album also has my all-time favorite song by them, which is Provision. Isolate was another big single. And then the other track I really like is called Threshold. And I'm not entirely sure if that was on all versions or not. It was at least on the version that I had. Sadly, I don't have my cassettes anymore to show, but I do have a few 12-inch singles that I've been buying over the years.
Nice.
These were all on the Wax Trax label. There's the Virus single that I think was just a one-off that they did. And some of these have remixed versions of other songs off the album. There's Isolate, and there's the Provision single. Yeah, but that, like I said, that was like my extent with them, was kind of, you know, these few albums, you know, this one, Tactical Neural Implant, their singles, was really all I was kind of familiar with, you know, leading up to this show. So, you know, it was cool kind of seeing what they were doing nowadays. And yeah, a lot of it I really do like. So I'm interested in, you know, hearing more.
So George, you have the voice of a DJ.
Pink Bunny 0. So Pink Bunny, true story. I was a radio DJ at one time. It was country music in my hometown. And I also did some oldies in Lancaster, but it was a good gig. Did a lot of commercial production. And, right now I'm doing like AV and IT simultaneously. So yeah, it was a good gig. Both my bosses were very cool and kind of let me listen to my own music while I worked in the studio. So I wasn't actually listening to country for 8 hours. I would bring in some CDs and tapes and just kind of listen to it while I worked. So
I remember because we carpooled to a party, and I remember just hanging out with you at work and hungover as hell.
Oh yeah, you totally came to work with me a few times, Bob. Yeah, those were good times.
Yeah. God, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Oh my God. So we're ready for Gary Numan. Do you want to start off Gary Numan?
Yeah. So let's jump into Gary Numan. Bob, I know we didn't really talk a lot about Frontline back in the day. I know we talked about Ministry a little bit, but I've had Gary Numan's Greatest Hits CD like well back to high school. Did we talk about him much kind of in our college years?
So. I know we definitely talked about Ministry. Of those three, it was probably Ministry the most. And I never really got into them. And then I started listening to them for this concert. I went, oh, I can get behind these guys. It's so weird. Like when you get older and your music tastes change. And it's like, yeah.
Totally. It's kind of like me with older Genesis as my taste evolved over the years, and especially the Peter Gabriel solo stuff. I'm like, damn it, Bob, you've been telling me all of this time, and now I believe you. It's like, especially Peter Gabriel solo. I'm like,
yeah,
what was I thinking?
Good.
But yeah, I was really only familiar with his greatest hits, and I actually own most of these albums that we're talking about. Just been collecting music all my life, so when I'm out and about, if I see things by artists and groups that I like, I just make a point to pick them up. So. I do have a good chunk of the Gary Numans. But again, like Frontline, there's a lot of stuff that I wasn't familiar with. So, you follow so many bands and there's so much new stuff that comes out and life gets busy and you get so backtracked on music to listen to. And then before you know it, there's like 10 albums that you've never heard. It's like, so...
I know, yeah, there's a couple bands like that where it's like, I haven't listened to them since 2010. Oh, wait, how far behind am I? I know a lot of the bands we used to listen to, like A-Pop and B&B, like, it's probably since been like 2010 since I picked up any of their albums, and I know there's got to be more since then, but... Yeah, and
I've heard, most of those, and who knows, maybe someday we'll go through those groups too.
I'd be down for that, yeah.
Yeah, but I had... never heard the original Tubeway Army album previous to this.
Neither had I.
To this ranking.
I was Replicas, but not this one.
Yeah, same here. I've had Replicas for quite a while, but I had never heard the original Tubeway Army. So you have the right icon, Bob. This is the one that I put in 7th.
Oh, this is your number 7?
Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
This
it
one
just seemed like best representation. They're not Gary Numan solo. I don't know. Well, Gary Numan self-titled.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is with the Tubeway Army, there's some electronics here, and there's some of what you're going to know Gary Numan as in a few albums. And you could kind of in the next album, Replicas, kind of really see he's getting more into the synthy kind of Kraftwerk sequencing kind of. And that's probably maybe why they dropped the Tubeway Army. This one kind of felt more of just kind of like post-punk.
Gary, like it's super electronic post-punk, but
and Gary has a unique voice. Like you cannot mistake him for anybody else. So, and I think that's really what set him apart from a lot of other bands. So it's just he has a unique voice, and he's also, a good guitar player and a good keyboard player too. So there's a lot of nuances in the music that kind of makes it a little different. But here, like, there was a few songs on this one I really enjoyed. Something in the House, Stealing You, and 0 Bars. And there are a couple heavy moments on here too. But still leaning more into like an early post-punk sound. It didn't grab me as much as Replicas. And actually, I have Replicas way higher on my list. Actually, that one,
We'll
and
get to mine, but yeah.
we will get to that. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, for an album of the time, it's pretty cool, and it's always cool to kind of hear where a band started out and what was the original sound. And so, but yeah, Bob, what is your number 7?
My number 7 is that one, Telekon. So this is one I want to stress. Like when I said I like all these albums, that goes especially for Gary Numan because I really like Gary Numan. And Telekon's a really good one, but is my number 7 on here. Mostly because maybe it's a little bit disappointment because I was like, ooh, I want to hear the follow-up, The Pleasure Principle. And he's got some good ones, but I don't think it's his best. That being said, like there's a couple on here that I absolutely love. Without even looking at You Die, I Die.
Yeah, that's
I love
a
that
classic
song so much.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And I know there's probably a couple other ones on here that I really like. But yeah, it's mostly it's good stuff. But this isn't one of my favorites from him. Obviously Pleasure Principle is going to be higher on this. Well, this the last spot, so it has to be. But the follow-up to this one, Dance, is also one that I like quite a bit more than this one as well. But I feel like this one's kind of sandwiched in, and it is an acceptable, good, solid album, but nothing as standoutish as I would prefer. Let's see, on here I have Wreckage, Air Crash Bureau, Sleep by the Window, I'm an Agent, I Dream of Wires, Joy Circuit, and I Die, You Die as like my favorites. Yeah, it's just solid Gary Numan, but like we'll definitely get to better stuff.
Well, it's interesting to note too, when you're young, and a lot of our favorite artists, you know, back in their younger days could turn out an album like once a year. So
Yeah.
you get a lot of those in between albums where, you know, I really like this one and mine's a little bit higher, but they're putting out albums fairly close to each other. So you don't get to any big stylistic changes until you're like 4 albums past their debut, or so, you know, sometimes there's just lost in the middle. And I could totally get behind, you know, some of your thoughts on this, Bob, especially, you know, some really great key, you know, cuts on here, but some others that are maybe just lost in the mix, you know.
Yeah.
And there are a ton of Gary Numan albums.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I want to stress I went over it. So he has 29 albums, counting the 2 Tubeway albums. And he did like 11 of them between 1979 and 1990. So that's 11-year gap where he is just kind of just churning out an album a year. And that was really common. I mean, Genesis did probably averaged about an album every year to year and a half in the 70s. Yeah. Back then, like you just kind of do an album fairly often. And I feel like most of the time now they do live shows, and there's advantages and disadvantages to them both. Because lots of times you know, just having lots of albums, it gives you lots of new material. But you know, unless they're really inspired, it may not be the best. But like, maybe it is good. Who knows? But yeah, it's just different. But okay. Yeah. What's your number 6?
For my number 6, I chose Sacrifice. This one was just okay for me. I thought compared to a lot of his other albums, the songs were a little soft, not as in style, but just the way that the songs are presented, a lot of atmosphere in this, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Definitely some songs on her that I really liked. The three that I picked out were Scar, Seed of a Lie, and Absolution. Absolution's really cool. A lot of the songs too had some really cool long introductions, a lot of like keyboard based solos in the beginning of the songs, which were really cool. But it didn't grab me, and that might take a couple more listens. I'll definitely give it another go, but nothing really stood out for me on this one. So, Bob, you've probably
standouts, but I will.
You've probably heard this. I've only heard this one once, so you know you might have some more thoughts on it. But yeah, that was my number 6.
But we'll get to my number 6 because, and we've already discussed my number 6 a bit. It is the first Tubeway Army one.
Oh, so we're kind of lining up here, aren't we?
Yeah,
sort of.
We're not too far off on Tubeway Army. Because this is actually, I really like this one. It just kind of edged out Telekon for me because this one is, I kind of just liked hearing him kind of figuring out his sound, and it really kind of sounds like that. It's, and not like in like a bad way where it's like just sloppy. Like you can tell he's experimenting and figuring out, and like it's kind of a more post-punk than any of his other stuff after this, but like it's solid post-punk, and it's super electronic, obviously, because it's freaking Gary Numan. But yeah, this is, I'd never heard this before the ranking, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I thought it was a solid one, and I feel like we've already said a lot about this, so you do your number 5.
My number 5. I chose Savage, and you can probably see where I'm going with this, Bob. It just might be a lot of nostalgia for early Gary Numan, but no, I really like this one, and this was more in line with what I was hearing at the show. I know they played a couple of cuts off here, but just the style of it, where some heavy beats, really, really clean but aggressive guitars and synths. So some key tracks that I picked out: Pray for the Pain, You Serve, My Name is Ruin, Bed of Thorns are the songs that really stuck out to me. But no, this was, again, a pleasant surprise. Like, when I'm getting ready for my second listen, this will probably be up there as one to check out. And who could forget this cover? I've seen this cover 100 times. I just now got around to listening to it. But when you said this was the Mad Max era, right?
No,
this is not the Mad Max.
A while before this, yeah, Mad Max era began. I want to say immediately after I Assassin, because essentially he saw Road Warrior and he went to the Mad Max era. Now this one, this is totally kind of Mad Max-ish, because like his sound just kind of progresses, and there's almost like he does like the 80s electronic stuff, which I haven't even gone to that stuff yet, but we will. I guess with a little bit of Telekon, but yeah, we'll get to the really good stuff later. But then after that, he goes into this like Mad Max era where it's still kind of 80s electronic, but like you can tell he got inspired by the Road Warrior, and the one album cover I was showing you where he's just in like that suit, that white suit. The weird thing is, if you listen to that album, it totally sounds like stuff that could be in Beyond Thunderdome quite easily. You wouldn't guess that looking at the album cover. But yeah, he goes through kind of a Mad Max era that just kind of makes him, he just goes darker and darker almost with every single album. Then he kind of goes a little bit dance, a little bit in the late 80s, early 90s. And then with Sacrifice, just goes dark. Then he kind of just evolves that sound from then on in. Sacrifice was kind of a big defining album for him. But yeah, while this isn't part of what I would consider the Mad Max era, it's not disconnected from the Mad Max era from any means. The cover kind of reveals that, though.
Something that I will say, if you're familiar with a certain type of Gary Numan, we heard you were talking to someone at the show. It's like, Gary Numan, Cars. That's the only.
Yeah.
How is he dark or industrial? And then this was before he actually went on stage, but like Ministry, where they started and where they ended up were two kind of different paths. But if you kind of listen to their discography from the beginning and kind of listen to each consecutive album, you can hear them working towards that sound.
Yeah.
So, and that's, yeah.
There's no album next to each other where it's like, well, that sounds like a completely different band. It kind of flows.
Right. And, you know, a lot of people say the same thing about Cold Life and with Sympathy and things like that. And it's like, well, there's a lot in between that and Psalm 69 that you'll hear.
Yeah.
You'll hear that progression as if you're kind of listening to their albums in chronological order. Yeah.
But yeah, this was your number 5. What my number 5 was. I just looked it up. Really, we're at that one, all right. Okay. Well, this is one. Oh, I Assassin. I Assassin is one that every time I listen to, it gets kicked up a bit higher on the list. It might be a bit higher next time I listen to it, but this is, it's I won't say it's peak Gary Numan 80s, but man, this one is fucking good. Just. Well, I guess it might be peak Gary Numan 80s because the other stuff I'm thinking of is 70s. But like this is totally the you got this is just kind of him evolving his sound. It's the follow up to Telekon, and I think this one does a much better job of kind of just kind of pushing him forward. The big song I heard on this that I really loved was Take Mystery to Bed.
Oh, such a good song.
Such a goddamn catchy song. Holy shit. I wish he had played it, but I wasn't really expecting it. But oh my god. Like this is just such a great album, and every time I listen to it I like it more. Highlights, White Boys and Heroes, War Songs, A Dream of Siam, I Assassin, and if we Take Mystery to Bed. But yeah, this album's just a banger. Like I said, every time I listen to it I like it more. If I were to listen to it another time, it might be number 4. If I listen to it enough, it might be my number 1. I don't know. It's got a lot of work to get to number 1. I will say that. But this is really, really good. I enjoyed this quite a bit. What's your number 4, George?
Yeah, you know what? We're kind of lining up here. I do have it. There it is.
Ooh.
A little bit of glare there.
I need to get some Gary Numan on vinyl.
This is one that, you know, you can sometimes remember where you bought things and kind of a little bit about the day. It's something that I really like about record collecting, and got this at Magnolia long time ago, but I just remember the record clerk being like, "Hey, look at you, you know, Gary Numan, awesome." And I was like, "Hey, I got taste."
Hey.
So, yeah, I really like this one. And you know what you said, Bob, I Assassin, the title track is great. And then the singles, you know, really carry some of these albums too. White Boys and Heroes, you know, Music for Chameleons, great. We Take Mystery to Bed.
This one? I didn't have that one marked. Oh my god, that's a great one too.
It is indeed on here. Yeah.
This is only my number 5. This is wrong.
So these next few that we're talking about are the ones that I'm really familiar, mainly from like the greatest hits collection. But you know, having owned some of these for several years, and you know, again, not that I'm like ignoring the later parts of the catalog. It's just kind of listening to what I find as I'm out hunting. You know, but this one I've had for a while, but so a little more familiar with this than some of the newer albums. But yeah, I Assassin. All right, Bob, are you on number 4?
I'll do my number 4. My number 4 is Savage. So this was when I said I half dozen Gary Numan albums I had available. This was one of them. Because My Name Is Ruin was one that hit me on the algorithm, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I heard that song. I went, Gary Numan. Why is that name familiar? Why is that? Oh my God, it's the Cars guy. And then I really enjoyed this one quite a bit. I like it's obviously different than the Cars sound, but like it's also 38 years later, something like that. So of course it's going to have a different sound. And the fact that he's still active and still like doing his own thing with his music, which is fantastic. I love it. And this is just, for a while, this is my favorite of his newer albums until I dove a bit further into it. But this is just a really like good Gothic album. And I think you named a lot of the tracks I really loved. Obviously, there's My Name Is Ruin was the big single that caught my eye. Ghost Nation, Bed of Thorns, End of Things, It All Began With You, um, When the World Comes Again, it's cropped off. What God Intended, Pray for the Pain You Serve. That's most of the album. But yeah, those are songs I absolutely love. Yeah. So maybe I'm cheating a little bit why it's a bit higher because I'm a bit more familiar with this one. This isn't the album I'm most familiar with, but yeah, I enjoyed this one quite a bit. Yes. Savage.
Savage.
What's your number 4, George? Wait,
think
is
I'm
it your
on-
number 4 or number 3?
Number 3.
Okay.
I went with Telekon, a little higher up on my list. And I think it's because of the songs associated with the albums. Like I Die, You Die has to be one of my all-time favorite Gary Numan songs. Just so catchy, so
Yeah.
I mean, the opening song, This Wreckage, was also a big single off of this album. Title tracks on his albums are always good too. It's almost like he knows that they're a good cut, so that's why it becomes the album title. But,
Yeah.
I Dream of Wires is also kind of a fan favorite, and there's a great documentary out there called I Dream of Wires, which is just about a bunch of different synth artists. Like Gary Numan is in it, Trent Reznor is in it. I want to say someone from Tangerine Dream is also in that documentary, but it's, a deep dive into like the history of synthesizers and kind of what kind of inspires different artists. So definitely, that's cool to check out if you're a keyboard player or you really appreciate electronic music. But I'm trying to see what else on here. I remember I'm an Agent being one that really stuck out. That's what kind of is the halfway song on here. But yeah, Telekon is my number 3.
All right. So my number 3 is this one. And this one is one that I hadn't heard before. So like going into this, I hadn't heard of the original Tubeway. I hadn't heard I Assassin. I hadn't heard Telekon actually. And I hadn't heard this one, but this one really grabbed me. Like this is the song where he begins his new kind of like his new sound. This is kind of like the first step in his, like, you had Warriors before as kind of a new step, and then what would be another step before that sonically where you can tell it's changing again. I would say probably Metal Rhythm. And then this was the next stage and this is kind of the stage he's at still, but he's done a lot less albums since this has come out. So I guess that kind of makes sense. But yeah, I love, like, this is where he embraces more the Gothic sound. And he even talked about in that one interview how this album was kind of a direct inspiration off of Songs of Faith and Devotion, which was kind of big for him. That was the thing that kind of just said, because he talks about how, like, that was the follow-up to Violator. So, of course, they do Violator 2.0, but they didn't. They did Songs of Faith and Devotion. It was just, like, this darker take on the band. He's like, that's a great idea. Just do a darker take. I love it, So he got inspired by that. And I thought he did a great job with this one. I will say with the follow-up to this Exile, he does have a song that I like that album, but there's a song that sounds so much like Higher Love. It's insane. But but yeah, no, this one is great. Probably my favorite track on here is Love and Napalm. Great guitars in that song too. But you got Pray, Deadliner, Question of Faith, Scar, Magic, Bleed. Just absolutely great tracks on here. Yeah, this one kind of caught me off how much I enjoyed it, but yeah, I enjoyed it quite thoroughly. But yeah, I have a feeling 1 and 2 are going to line up really close. But let's find out. George, what's your number 2?
Yeah, I know we have the same 1 and 2, but we'll see if we pick the right.
Yeah,
we'll
see
right
if we get
slots
the
for
order
these. For my number 2, I picked Replicas. I don't know why I have so much glare going on in here, but
lighting's evil.
It is. So this still kind of continues some of the Tubeway Army sounds, but getting more and more into the keyboard side of things on this one. But there's 2 songs on here that are like 2 of my absolute favorite Gary Numan songs, and that's why it's so high up. Down in the Park, which was the second Gary Numan song that I heard. Cars being, everyone knew Cars. I knew that as that song as a kid. But gonna date myself here, but Marilyn Manson did a version of Down in the Park, which was a B-side to the Lunchbox single.
I did not know that.
Which is a good cover, by the way. So, when I was first getting into... Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to add, if you're... Exile actually ends with a live version of Down in the Park, done in kind of like the Gothic style that he was doing at that time. And
oh, yeah?
It's really cool.
I'll have to check that out.
I mean, I definitely go for the original, but it's kind of cool that he still does the old songs, but does it in his newer style, it updates it. Kind of cool.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. But, and then Our Friends Electric. I mean, talk about iconic keyboard riffs. I mean, and that's one thing, in the synth community, a lot of people, when you talk about famous keyboard riffs, people always bring that song up, It's just so damn catchy.
It's iconic. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, other songs on here that I really like is the opening track, Me, I Disconnect From You, getting more into the quirky electronics. And then I Nearly Married a Human, which is kind of like a more down tempo. But some of the cuts on here still kind of have that early Tubeway sound. Again, I don't mind it, but you can definitely tell he's moving into his own classic era. Maybe that's why in the next album he's just Gary Numan. But Bob, you might know the history a little more. Did Tubeway disband, or did they just start working under the name Gary Numan?
Okay, so essentially they just started working under the name Gary Numan because the band that worked on Replicas and the band that worked on Pleasure Principle, exact same guys. Pretty much Tubeway Army was essentially Gary Numan's project from the start. So yeah, he wrote and produced everything and performed a lot of it. So yeah, it's just him deciding not to go with the band name, just deciding to go with his name. Although it's a stage name still. His name's not actually Gary Numan. I don't remember his actual last name.
Do you want me to wiki it while you're talking?
That is actually, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
It is there. Gary Webb.
Gary Webb.
But yeah, he goes by Gary Numan. And fun fact, Replicas is my number 2. We'll go ahead and get that out of the way because god damn it, this album is absolute banger from beginning to end, in my opinion. I loved it.
Yeah. Great.
This is one I was fairly familiar with, though. I don't know if I've actually sat down and listened to the album from beginning to end before this, but I knew a lot of these songs. And yeah, the ones I didn't know, I was just like, ooh, this is awesome. I love this. But yeah, Me, I Disconnect From You is awesome. Our Friends Electric, god damn it, love that song. I was addicted to that song. When the pandemic started, there was a couple songs I got addicted to, and Our Friends Electric was definitely one of them. And I don't know why, just one of the songs that came up. But Praying to the Aliens is awesome. Down in the Park is a goddamn classic. You Are in My Vision, Replicas, It Must Have Been Years. I Nearly Married a Human is fun. Do You Need Service is another one I have highlighted. There's so many good songs on here. This is just kind of iconic Gary Numan under the name Tubeway Army. And I want to say, even though he didn't play any Tubeway Army tracks during the show, there was Tubeway Army merch at the
That
show,
was
so you
cool.
can pick up that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a great fucking album. I loved it. Shall I go ahead and guess what your number one is, George?
Well, if we're doing the process of elimination, although our viewers don't know exactly which albums we picked for this ranking, because there's a lot of albums. But,
yeah, they weren't paying attention.
But yeah, I picked the Pleasure Principle. Mm-hmm. And again, I always feel a little bad. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I picked the most popular album. And one of my favorite songs on it is also one of the most popular songs. And
yeah, easily his most popular song.
So, but yeah, again, some things going into this album that I already knew. I mean, obviously Cars. One thing that kind of prompted me to check out more Gary Numan is, I think around 2000, Nine Inch Nails did a version of the song Metal, which is on here, which is not on his greatest hits. So I'm like, that's a really cool song. It's not.
He did do that one.
Yeah, he obviously has some album tracks that are not hits that are really cool songs. So, I started to dig a little bit deeper into his catalog. And yeah, this was one of the ones that I checked out, I think, pretty early on.
I remember first listening to Cars, which I think, or not Cars, but Nine Inch Nails is in Metal, which is on Things Falling Apart, I want to say.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I remember listening and go, oh, that's a cool song, and learning that it's a cover and be like, oh, it's by the Cars guy. I think that was me first discovering Gary Numan back in the day. But like, they did a tour together, didn't they? Because I know there's a couple of songs where they perform them together live. Like they do a live version of Cars together.
Yeah.
I know that definitely exists.
Yeah, they did a small arena tour on select dates, but yeah, they did perform a version of Cars, which is really cool. And then they also did a version of Metal. Maybe another song, I don't remember, but there's things out on YouTube. I don't remember if those were just those two songs, but another fun fact: the band Fear Factory did a version of Cars, and that was in
I did not know that.
The 96, 7. let me go back
last year
in my head. And another tie-in, Rise Fulber from Fornt Line Assembly did the electronics in Fear Factory. He wasn't an official member, but he was responsible for all the programming and the synth work, and so there's kind of a connection there to this video. But yeah, Bob, can I take a wild guess what your number one is?
Yeah, this is my number one. This album is just classic Gary Numan from beginning to end, in my opinion. I love every track. Like, essentially, I thought like Replicas is classic Gary Numan, and this one is like somehow more classic Gary Numan. It was kind of amazing listening to him. But yeah, this is I keep on saying this is like classic 80s Gary Numan, but this is all in 79. Like, essentially, like, how far ahead Kraftwerk had to be when like Gary Numan is considered an electronic pioneer in the late 70s, and they've been doing it since like 1970. But yeah, this one has, obviously, we brought up Metal, Cars. Who hasn't brought up Cars? But I also have Conversation, Engineers, Tracks, Me. I don't have Films highlighted for some reason, but Films is a great one. Maybe I don't have it highlighted because he says I didn't like the film, and god damn it, I'm a movie fan. Gary, you have to like the film. Good film. It's a good film. But it is a catchy song, even if you didn't like the film. It's a good film, Gary.
Complex is a good song too.
Complex is excellent as well. Yes. No, I pretty much like every single song on here. This is just classic. And you said, hey, isn't it lame to pick out the most popular one as your number one? No, it's awesome because it's awesome. It's a great album. But yeah, I think, like, in case you're wondering, this was his best selling and his highest rated one. but yeah, since they were both the same, I went with the Replicas, which was the second highest rated one. But yeah, great fucking album. I loved it. Are you prepared for Ministry?
Yeah, I think so. I'll probably have
Okay.
more to say about Ministry.
Well, that's good because I will have less to say about Ministry. I guess I'll go ahead and open with Ministry. I'm going the wrong way. No, wait, I'm going the right way. Yeah. So Ministry. What? Oh yeah. So my number 7 is Twitch with Ministry. So George, we talked about briefly, and I brought up. I like this album. I think there's some cool sonic stuff he does. I do think it's a little derivative of Skinny Puppy, but I don't know. Like he probably hadn't heard of Skinny Puppy because they were fairly new at the time. But just listening to it now, it feels that way. That being said, there is one track on here that really holds it back to me. Over the Shoulder, I really dislike that song.
You dislike it?
Yeah. It does not work for me at all.
Oh, I love that song.
Oh,
that was the single too.
I know it's like the single, yeah, because there's a couple different versions on mine. I'm like, oh, I hate the vocals on it. I will say it's catchy. It is catchy, but yeah, no, that held this sound back for me. Outside of that, I think sonically they do some cool stuff with this one. It's definitely an in-between album. Like you can hear essentially this one you need to bridge a gap between with Sympathy and Land of Rape and Honey. Because if you just dive Land of Rape and Honey with Sympathy to Land of Rape and Honey, that's gonna feel kind of drastic.
Yeah.
But if you have this one in the middle, it's like, oh, I can hear that. Okay. And 12-inch singles helps it a lot too. In fact, I'd probably say it helps it more. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one I think it's decent, but like that one song really holds it back for me.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's where I'm at with Twitch.
All right. It's a little higher up for me. Of these that we picked, I picked Amerikkkant or Kakant.
You're fired.
So
new one? Well, I guess it's not the new one. It's the newer one. But yeah,
this one's good. I went to this tour, and I think they played at that same venue. It was Kimba.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it's okay. The problem is, it's having listened to each consecutive album. The first one that I've heard was Filth Pig when it first came out, and then each consecutive album I've heard when it first came out along the way. And Bob, I know we talked, and you really like this one too, and I do too. It's sometimes like they got into a sound, and a lot of these albums came out so close to each other because Al went on a good creative kick and it was putting out albums fairly regularly, and this one just doesn't stand out. Like, I mean, you can make an argument for it, but in the catalog, like it's not too different from like, the George Bush albums or I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but again, I love Ministry. I've liked everything that they put out to some degree, and there's some good stuff on here. So I'll dive into that. The opening track, I Know Words, which, it's obviously making fun of Trump, but some really cool, like stringed instruments, like real stringed instruments, which is something they had never really done before. They sometimes have really radically different sounding songs on some of their albums, but that was like kind of a new, fresh, idea on a Ministry album. So that was cool. Twilight Zone with the very obviously sampled Rod Serling stuff.
Yeah,
but cool song. It kind of harkens back to like, Scarecrow off of Psalm 69, kind of like the beat of the track and creepy guitars, harmonica. It's really cool. Orgasm was one of the singles, and apart from maybe some of their early cuts, is kind of like as close as they got to Killing Joke, which was a band that's
that Killing
Joke kind of was kind of like an adjacent band to Ministry. They kind of started at the same time and had different phases of musical styles, and some of the players, guitarists, keyboardists, etc., were in Ministry from different times. And likewise with Ministry, I think people from Ministry, had played in Killing Joke, at different times or another. But and Victims of a Clown is also a cool track on here. But, again, I don't dislike it. I actually think the two albums after this one are stronger albums.
Fine word.
But, of the 7 that we're talking about, I just put this one last. So, again, I rambled on. Like I said, I have more to say about Ministry. Go for it, Bob.
Well, I will definitely have a lot more to say about this one when I get to it. Let's see. Where am I at? Okay, we're already at that one. Okay, so this is actually one I really like. So yeah, no, I like this list. 12-inch singles. Kind of surprised, but I think this is really cool. Like, this one almost sounds like the perfect mix. And I almost feel like this one kind of helped bridge with Sympathy to Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, you can hear a harder edge in this one than you can with Sympathy. But there's a lot of synth pop in this one as well, which I really appreciate. This one also, if you're looking for singles, this one includes Every Day is Halloween, which is like, they have like a newer version of it from like the 90s, I want to say, which is the more metal version. I definitely prefer this version. It's a bit longer, and
Me too.
It just sounds cooler. Yeah. The metal version is fine, but this one's just cooler in my opinion. But yeah, this one has lots of cool tracks like All Day. What is it? It's not All Day. I want to say it's Cold Day, and then
Cold Life.
Cold Life,
Yeah.
and All Day. That's it. Okay.
Yeah, Cold Life was.
He didn't do Cold Day and All Day, did he?
Cold Life was the first Ministry release.
Mm-hmm. And maybe what's holding this one back for me is there's a couple different versions of different songs on here, so it does get a little redundant at times. But it is kind of also a collection of just the singles, so it's a little bit forgivable given the nature of it. But the tracks on here overall, I think, are fantastic, and I think it kind of shows the evolution of their sound. But yeah, this is a solid, this is a solid album. I really like this one. Let's see. So that'd be my number 6. So yeah, I opened Ministry. Okay, so you're number 6, George.
Okay. I feel like our Ministry list isn't going to line up as well.
Oh well.
But that's okay. I like hearing different takes on things. But for my number 6, I chose Psalm 69. I know that, and that's weird to say because this is their most popular album that has their most popular song on it. This one, I think this was I don't know if it was like the second or the third Ministry album that I heard. But this one for me is maybe like a catchier version of The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste. And not that that's a bad thing. It's this isn't a bridge between that album and Filth Pig. Filth Pig is like a completely different kind of style. But this, I think, was a more polished and refined sound of what they were going for on the Mind album. But I think the Mind album had a better selection of styles, and not that this doesn't have some catchy songs. It has some really damn good catchy and dancey type songs. It's just I think the Mind album kind of grabbed me a little more, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So, but the songs that I really enjoy on here is Just One Fix. I mean that's a killer metal era Ministry song. Yeah. Scarecrow has great atmosphere, great samples in it. I do like Jesus Built My Hot Rod. I thought it was kind of stupid.
I do. It's not one
the
of my
first time I
favorites,
heard
but
it.
I do enjoy it. Yeah.
Over time, it's just like okay, this is cool. There's an interview with his wife at the time, and Al's wives have always been kind of his management, which she did an interview and she's like, I'll never forget the first time I heard Jesus Built My Hot Rod. I was in the studio. This isn't verbatim, but just the way she described it, it was just totally different from them. It was just this huge onslaught of guitars and synthesizers and like nothing that she had never heard before. It was like completely like mind-boggling. And the lyrics, you know, is Gibby Haynes from the Butthole Surfers is on lead vocals on this. It is not Al. And the studio sent them a budget. They didn't get any concrete material from them. So they're like, okay, we at least need to put a 12-inch out. So you need to send us a song to prove that we had the money is being well spent and you guys are indeed working and not just blowing your advance. So you need to send us something. And they quickly threw together this song, and the lyrics are just nonsense. It's Gibby Haynes. He's drunk. You know, he just rambled on for like a half hour. This is all from Al's book, by the way. And the lyrics are just cut up sections from this complete half-hour recording of nonsense from Gibby.
I could see that.
and then they matched it up to this song, and it's like, and then it became like, you know, their biggest hit, and it was a huge, you know, 12-inch release for Warner Brothers, and, you know, skyrocketed the sales for this album. It was like their platinum album.
Yeah.
so weird, but anyways, I put Psalm 69 at my
well, I mean, this was their huge album. I guess we'll get a bit more into it later. Not much later though, actually. So you'll probably be a little disappointed with this, but I want to stress I really love this album. My number we're at number 5, right? Yeah, number 5 is with Sympathy, their first one. Fantastic album. I want to stress when I listened to the full Ministry discography, this is much higher up than this was represented, because this is kind of there's just good albums that we picked here. There's lots of stuff I'd put below this if we're going through the whole discography. And this one is it's on the lower end of these 7, but like it's really good, and it's so different from his other stuff. Like, again, like you brought up, you know, if you listen to this back to back with Psalm 69, yeah, you're going to be a little surprised. But like, if you listen to them in order, you can hear how they got from there to here. So, and just to make it clear, in case anybody's wondering, this is their synth pop album. This is pure synth pop, not a hint of metal in this one. And it is catchy as hell, and I kind of love it. There's something very charming about this album. Just every track I kind of like. And I want to say there's kind of I feel like he's still learning a lot musically with this one. So like I would like to see him, like he's talked about the next album being a revisit of this, and I would like him to revisit it, but like not have it be a metal album, just have it be synth pop still, but like with him knowing more about being more musically educated, or just learning more about music over his, 40 years of life experience since then. But yeah, this is just a fun, catchy little album. I enjoy it quite a bit.
And what's interesting too, if you listen to the energy, the arrangements, kind of the grooves, while this is synth pop and Psalm 69 is industrial metal, you can still kind of hear Al's gift, which is creating like dancey songs that, they're repetitive, but they're also very catchy. And, he could be singing in a natural voice or shouting, but he has an ear for like earworm grooves.
Yes,
so that is the common ground between like this and some of the later albums. So it's just interesting. Yeah.
What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Twitch. This one is like you said, Bob, it's an interesting transitional album. I don't know that he had heard Skinny Puppy by this point.
Yeah, I don't know if he had either, but just knowing Skinny Puppy and hearing this, I was like, it sounds like Skinny Puppy.
But that was a style that was
yeah,
starting to emerge. And I think trying to remember kind of interviews, what Al was thinking at the time is he was getting into some hip hop, and we know he's been into that since like Cold Life. That kind of has like more of a hip hop kind of feel to it. But he wanted the producers from the Sugar Hill Gang, which is one of the premier hip hop groups, and one of those was Adrian Sherwood. And I think he contacted him because of some remixes that he had done for Depeche Mode. And fun fact, Depeche Mode and Ministry did a couple of headlining shows together in 1982. Nice. So there's a connection there with Depeche Mode. So he brought on Adrian Sherwood. They did this project, and basically he said like everything that he learned, like studio tricks and wizardry, he learned by making this album. Again, he had a bad experience with Sympathy making the album. There's a lot of folklore that surrounds that in the Ministry history, and I might get a little deeper. It's a little higher on my list, but here, like you said, Bob, you can still hear a lot of With Sympathy in here.
Oh yeah.
But you're starting to get into some more like harsher territory. Some of the songs are still catchy, but he gets very noisy and very experimental, especially towards the second half of the album. Still mostly electronic. You don't really start to see a lot of guitars until like The Mind Is a Terrible Thing to Taste, but still dancey, still funky. The other engineer on this was Keith LeBlanc, who was part of the Sugar Hill Gang Productions, and those two producers also went on to work on Pretty Hate Machine, and Trent wanted those two specifically because of this album. So this album and the next one, The Land of Rape and Honey, were big influences on early Nine Inch Nails. So little fun history there, I guess. But the songs I picked from this one is the opening track, Just Like You. And it's kind of funky, and something that I love about it is I call that Al's Ray Charles song, because throughout the song he just kind of stops. He's like, and then he has these really funky keyboard solos in the song too, which kind of reminds me of like a Ray Charles thing. If you could imagine Ministry doing Ray Charles. Sure. But yeah, this one has a remix of All Day, which was a Wax Trax single. The Angel, which is a very atmospheric kind of down-tempo song. And I'm kind of an early Ministry nerd, and there's kind of like a holy grail item that's out there, and there's supposed to be a unreleased version of The Angel that's kind of done in more of like the Land and Rape and Honey type style. So they were going to put it out as a 12-inch, and it never happened. But the remix is out there, and it's been talked about over the years, and no one's heard it yet. So I'm dying to hear that version. Over the Shoulder, sorry, Bob, I think it's a great single. It's an interesting vocal style. Al was going through different phases, trying to try on different hats of styles, and between like this album and then The Land of Rape and Honey, there's a lot of songs with kind of very different vocal styles that he's trying out before he kind of lands on his now traditional vocal style. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, sonically, this is a really cool album. I really like the production on it. I heard With Sympathy before I heard this one, and I'll get to that. But again, I thought With Sympathy was really catchy, and for the longest time, I thought Land of Rape and Honey was the first Ministry album. Yeah. And then, like I said,
I can see that. Yeah, I can see.
What going back to the story of a bunch of cassettes that I got off of eBay for my first car, one of those cassettes was With Sympathy. And I'm like, oh, there's there's a Ministry album in there that I've never heard of. And then when I heard it, I'm like, whoa. But I really liked it because it kind of sounded like Depeche Mode, you know, and I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan. So I'm like, well, what did the other Ministry albums sound like? So I went to the record store and they happened to have this and the 12-inch singles. So I got those pretty early on. So, and again, this wasn't what I was expecting it to sound like either. So, so that's kind of what kicked off my huge Ministry fandom. I probably wouldn't be as obsessed with their early work, you know, if it was just kind of like those 3 big albums, Mind, Land, Psalm 69. Like, oh yeah, they're cool industrial albums, but I wouldn't have the fascination for Ministry if not for those early albums and just how different they are.
In particular, it's so different than they are 2 albums later, and it's just very interesting to hear them sonically change. So I can get that.
Okay, anyways, I went on too long, Bob.
That's fine. Yeah, go for it. That was your 4, right? Are we on? Okay. So I'd be on 3. Is that right? I'm brain farting. Let me just look. No, that'd be my number 4. Okay, and my number 4, and it's not too far off from yours, George. If I can find my mouse. My number 4 is not that one. Psalm 69. This is good, and every single track on here is kind of catchy, kind of has a cool groove. It just kind of for me, like I listened to this after Mine's a Terrible Thing to Taste, which I guess makes sense is the one after that. But it just sounds kind of like that. I mean, it's different, but like if I don't know, I was really impressed with Mind and to a lesser degree Land of Rape and Honey. And then this one is kind of like, I guess, the third one in kind of like that trilogy where he kind of is establishing his sound. But it just didn't stick out quite as well as those other ones. And I want to stress, like, there's lots of really catchy stuff on here. Most of the songs on here, I could probably just immediately look at sound and be like, oh yeah, this one. Oh yeah, this one. Oh yeah, this one. But the 2 before this, I definitely preferred. Yeah, of course, it opens with NWO, Just One Fix, Scarecrow, Psalm 69. Those are all highlight songs for me. Jesus Built My Hot Rod is, as I said before, I enjoy it. I think it's a fun little song. It's just not one of my favorite Ministry songs. It is entertaining though. But yeah, this is like, I imagine for a lot of people this would probably be their number 1, and I guess since I usually pick the popular one to be my number 1, this would be the guess. But like, no, I feel like there's definitely a lot better stuff that he does. But yeah, this is my number 4. Yes, that is right. Yes.
Okay.
What's your number 4, George?
I think I'm on 3.
Oh, you're on. Wait.
Yeah.
Are you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm on 3.
Wait, did you open Ministry? I thought I opened Mystery.
No, you're right. I am on 4. I just can't. I can't count.
Yeah, no, we're doing 3 of these. It's a bit much.
Yeah, I know.
We're
all right. Mind is terrible.
Blasphemy.
Thing to taste. Yeah. Again, the cool thing about early Ministry is, you know, there's something in there for everybody if you're a fan, and you know, I knew that we were not always going to line up in this particular ranking, but I love this album.
Well, I think it's a little bit what the difference might also be is it's something that you've had with you for like 20 plus years, and it's something that I pretty much got into in the last couple months, so that's going to change my perspectives quite a bit. So
that's fair. But I mean, Thieves is amazing, and you know, the first time that I heard it, I'm like, whoa, yes, I love this. You know, such a cool groove, and the sampling is very cool. And then it's kind of hard to describe. This album has a lot of what you would expect classic Ministry to sound like, but then it also has these really weird tangents on it as well, and it's like that's really left field for them too. And this is only their fourth album. One of my all-time favorite Ministry songs is Dream Song, which is an instrumental. It's the very last song.
Yeah.
And it's very atmospheric. They actually haven't done any other songs like it. I'm hoping that in Al's vault, and I'm sure we'll hear stuff from this album. He's released some outtakes from this already, but like with Sympathy had like 36 songs that weren't even on the album. So if you like with Sympathy, there's like 36 other songs out there. You know, and I'm hoping there's more stuff out there that's kind of like the Dream Song. But you know, So What is a classic Ministry song. The whole tour around this, they had a huge band. Or Ogre was part of the tour. Martin Atkins from Pigface was one of the drummers, in addition to their own drummer. You know, Chris Conley, you know, we talked about him a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So there's like the Cannibal song, which is kind of like the evil version of I Wanted to Tell Her, with the funky bass line and the disco beats, but it's really dark and demented.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
With kind of like some of the Hellraiser samples and things. It's cool. And then there's Faith Collapsing, which is another instrumental and kind of sounds like a zombie apocalypse. Like this album, it's the start of their classic sound. You know, this is where they first started getting back into guitars, but they still kind of had some like new wave type arrangements on here. Land, Rape and Honey, and Twitch were a little more experimental, but these are kind of like more, you know, drum beats to the floor, back to like traditional song arrangements. But I mean, I could talk about Ministry all night, but here we go. I went ahead and put this album as my number 4.
All right, so that put me at number 3. Oh, yeah. So my number 3 is Land, Rape, and Honey. Really cool album. I really like. This is another one that, like, every time I listen to it, I like it more and more. This is like, for Gary Numan, it was Eye Assassin. Every time I listened to it, I like this one, liked it more. And then for Ministry, it was Land of Rape and Honey. Every time I listen to it, I find more to appreciate. There is kind of, it's a synth pop, like, even though this is pretty much classic Ministry as people would know them at this point. This is kind of them. This is the first album where they've kind of figured out their sound, but there's still like synth pop like elements to this one that I really kind of appreciated. Yeah, this is just a really good one. And like, on my list, there was Hezbollah, and you brought up how that was during their early days, and it's like, I could totally hear that now that you've said that.
Yeah.
Let's see, the couple other highlights were, where are we at? Oh, Stigmata, of course, they did Stigmata at the show. Golden Dawn, Land of Rape and Honey title track. I prefer. But honestly, like, all these songs are pretty solid, and like I said, this is Ministry. Like, they've figured out their sound, and they will experiment with it from here. But like, this is kind of the baseline I felt for their sound for the rest of it. Really, really good album. I don't have as much to say about Ministry since I'm a newer fan, but like, I just really thoroughly enjoyed this one. Number 3, George.
Oh, number 3. Okay. My number 3 is with Sympathy. And that might be because I played this cassette to death in my car. And like I said, it was a shock when it is catchy. And, you know, I'm really big into synth pop and Depeche Mode. And, you know, when I first heard it, I'm like, this is really cool, but it's not what you would expect if you're new to Ministry.
No.
So, you know, I showed it to a lot of my friends and people that I knew were in the ministry. I'm like, you need to hear their first album, and I want to hear what you think. And it's always like it's either people love it or they just don't get it. And I mean, if you're not into this style of music, it may not be your thing. But no, great songs on here. I like the songs that I specifically highlighted were Effigy, Revenge. Revenge would be a top 10 ministry song for me.
Yeah.
And then and then Should Have Known Better, I think is a really catchy melodic song. And something I appreciate about it too is, Al is, I think, more talented than he gives himself credit for. Like, he can make melodic music, he can sing, he can make pop music. He's done like a country album called The Buck Satan 666 Shooters. He's done some hip hop style stuff like we talked about with, like maybe some of Twitch and the Cold Life single, and different degrees of metal and disco with the Revolting Hawk. So Al's kind of like a musical juggernaut. But if you're only into Psalm 69, like you're missing out on a lot of cool material. Like Al has a very, very diverse discography. So if you keep that in mind, this is a cool album. Again,
well, I remember like back in the day, you guys were into ministry, and I never really got into them. And like kind of the one exception was probably this one, because even though it wasn't on regular rotation for me, I remember hearing you played this one for me. I was like, I can get behind this. This is cheesy fun,
Yeah. And Al had a bad time making this album. It wasn't a pleasant creative process for him. So a lot of people say, well, he just grew out of synth pop, or he was forced to make a synth pop album. No, the demos and the live cuts that predate this, they very much were a synth pop band. This is just a little bit more polished and not as, edgy. And not that the demos and the live cuts were thrashy or anything like that. They just had more of a bite to them. So I highly recommend, if you like this album, there's a lot of various collections out there that Ministry's put out over the past 10 years or so of various demos, outtakes, live cuts from, like 81, 82, 83, 84. Some really good material out there. And like I said, there's probably 36 songs kind of surrounding this era that, never got a proper album release. So we might get into that more with the 12-inch singles here in a few minutes.
Get into.
Yeah. But yeah, with Sympathy is a great album. And if you're into synth pop, it's a classic synth pop album.
It is.
So that's my number 3.
All right. So my number 2, diverging from you quite a bit. I don't know. I just really love this one when I first put it on, and and I think, and maybe it's even partially because, for me, like I was listening through all of the so fun fact for the With Sympathy tour, part of that tour, they were a supporting act for the Police. I just read that here. I went synchronicity. What?
Yep.
This randomly. Okay, so, but anyways, so listening through the entire discography from beginning to end, like I really liked like those first like trilogy of albums where I like the first 2, they're finding their sound, and they have this trilogy of albums with Land of Rape and Honey, Mine is a Terrible Thing, Taste, and Psalm 69, where they're really finding themselves. And then Filth Pig definitely had some bangers. And then after that, like I feel like the albums are getting a bit, I'm enjoying them less and less, and they're getting kind of samey. And I feel like between 2000 until like let me pull up I just had it here a second ago, the whole discography pretty much from where is it? There we go. So like, yeah, kind of starting with Dark Side of the Spoon until Beer to Eternity. A lot of those albums I kind of forget about, more or less, with two I want to point out. Houses of the Mole, I thought was probably the best in that era, which is his first George Bush album. It wasn't amazing for me, but I thought that was totally decent. And then Relapse, which I wasn't a huge fan of the songs on Relapse, but I felt like Relapse was better produced than most of his albums. So it kind of gave it kind of a different tone for me. But for the most part, most of those albums in that era, there's a couple cool songs, but I can kind of give or take with it. I'm not too picky. I don't see myself revisiting all those. But then Amerikkkant came on, and I found myself really enjoying it. And looking into it, like, this is like he got really political. Obviously, I think it was Anti-Mosotium. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but
Animosity Samina.
Yeah, okay, yes. Obviously, that one deals a lot with it's Israel Palestine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's definitely going more political. And that became kind of a big part of his albums during that era. And I wish I enjoyed him more, because like his like I for the most part I agree with his politics. I have no issues with his politics at all. But Amerikkkant was the first one it was obviously a super political album, but like I could actually get behind it sonically, and it was just kind of refreshing for me to have one of his political albums I could really enjoy. And yeah, this is his Trump album. And he famously did an interview where he talked about how he did a trilogy of George W. Bush albums because he hated George W. Bush. And then when Trump happened, he was like, God, I didn't realize how good I had it under Bush.
Yeah.
Because he really hates Trump, and he frankly has a lot of fun with Trump in this one. Victims of a Clown is probably a highlight for me. I want to see the second track on here, or is it the third?
I think it's the third. Yeah. I think Twilight Zone is the second song.
I think you're right. Yeah, Twilight Zone's really good too, and I know the words, obviously making fun of Trump. That's a good little intro song. I also have Wargasm, Antifa, Game Over, and Amerikkkant, the title track, as highlights on here. But yeah, this one just really, like, for someone with politics I pretty much am in line with. I was kind of shocked how little I enjoyed a lot of his political albums, and kind of until this one, where it just kind of fucking worked for me. Will this one stay at number 2 as I get more and more familiar with Ministry and just kind of let the album settle more? I don't know, but right now I really, really enjoyed this one. I felt this was him kind of finding his sound kind of again, I want to say. Because, like I said, there's that large period where it's a lot of like samey stuff, I want to say, and it kind of blurs together for me.
Yeah.
And then I feel like starting with this one and the next 2 after that, they just feel fresher to me. I enjoyed the last 3 more than I have probably any of the albums since maybe Filth Pig.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. And I mean, I am in agreement, and there's the Ministry fan base is all over the place with kind of what album preferences there are. But
yeah,
the last 2 albums I actually really enjoy those, and I feel that he's doing different types of things on those albums stylistically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, of the last 3, I mean, this is definitely my favorite of the last 3, but I thought Hopium, which just came out like earlier this month, I thought that's really good. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I think that one will sit with me for a while. And Moral Hygiene was just solid in my opinion, but
I like Moral Hygiene a lot.
Well, I mean, I think it's quite good, and frankly, I don't know. I think when I did the whole album ranking, From Beer to Eternity might have been my least favorite, so that might help Amerikkkant quite a bit. It's the one immediately after Beer to Eternity, because I think, like, when I heard that one, I was like, oh.
That is also my least favorite. Relapse, the one before it, I don't necessarily like the lyrics or
Yeah.
the vocal deliveries, but the music on Relapse is actually really good. Like you said,
Relapse, like I said, like Relapse,
Yeah.
like I'm like I'm not a huge fan of the songwriting even on Relapse, but like
but the production
it's
is
well
great.
produced.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah,
it kind of made
it's
it stand out a bit. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that hurt Beer to Eternity even more because it's like sandwiched right in between two, like in my opinion, possibly two of the best produced Ministry albums, and you just get this one album that's kind of sloppy and I guess maybe kind of trying to do a return to form, but just doesn't work.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like all of the Ministry albums
yeah. I
to
mean,
some degree. Yeah.
I think every single album has at least a couple songs on it I enjoyed quite a bit. So
Yeah. And if I'm not like super into it, I at least appreciate it. So
yeah.
yeah.
And I think it's great Al's still doing stuff at this point. So hey.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your number two, George?
My number two is the 12-inch singles release. This one's a little bit of a weird one. Not technically an album, but we included it for a few reasons.
It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bridge between With Sympathy and Twitch. And there some of the With Sympathy songs on here. Cold Life being one, I'm Falling being another. It should be noted that there's like a few different releases of this. There's the original that was just the 4 main singles and then a remix of each of those 4 songs, which was the original release. And then they did a second version called Early Tracks, which took off a couple of those songs but added some more. And then there's another one, which is this one, which has more of a complete overview of the Wax Trax era. So, like Bob said, Every Day is Halloween is on this. That's one of my all-time favorite Ministry songs. Nature of Love is one of the first songs they started messing around with like film dialogue and, which is still a very prominent Ministry sound today, is just using a lot of sound clips. And, All Day is a catchy song. Some remixes and things here and there. This does include Same Old Madness, which was a popular early song for them. They did a music video. They had recordings ready to go for a single release. And then they started working on With Sympathy, and it just kind of got lost in the mix. But it's a great song, and it's actually more politically charged than some of their earlier songs. It's jabbing at the Reagan administration. And there's another song from that era called America, which is also about the Reagan stuff. So
wait,
Al
Jurgensen gets political?
Yeah, so Al being political, it's like people like, hey, when did Al Jurgensen get political? Well, since 1981, since the band came out.
Yeah.
So
no.
But yeah, some great songs on here. Overkill. This has some outtakes from Twitch and things on here as well. And if you find this expanded version and you really like the bulk of the material, there's another release called the Ministry Tracks Box, which has even more demos and unreleased songs, and it has all the side projects like the early Revolting Cocks and all the one-offs like Palehead, 1000 Homo DJs, which Bob, you might know, Trent Reznor did a vocal for Supernaut, which is a Black Sabbath cover.
I did not know that.
Yeah, check it out. This is my favorite era of Ministry. Maybe it doesn't work well as an album, more of a collection, but
it's a good collection.
Yeah, my favorite Ministry material. Check out that box called Tracks Box. That's my favorite collection of Al Jurgensen related stuff. But yeah, that's my number 2, which is 12-inch singles.
Mm-hmm. That brings us to number 1, which is the correct answer for their best album, which is, of course, Mine Is a Terrible Thing to Taste.
That's not my number 1.
we can just go ahead and end this. This is the best album. It's the best album. No, this has to be like their second most popular album, so I'm pretty close to their most popular album. But this is the one that really synced up for me. Like, I talk about Land of Rape and Honey, which is excellent, and that's kind of them like solidifying their sound. This one gets kind of them evolving it to the next step. And I never felt like it got better than this after I heard this. And it was interesting hearing them build up to this and then do this, and then we get Psalm 69, which is good. But yeah, it's not this. And I love like So What is such a weird little quirky song to have in here. And of course the opening Thieves, Burning Inside, which say Burning Inside is definitely a song I was super familiar with, if nothing else because of the club.
They did play this album a lot at the club. A lot of
and
tracks from this album.
Did they do a lot of tracks? I mainly remember Burning Inside.
They played that. They played Thieves. I've heard So What there. I remember looking at the DJ request log. I remember too, someone wrote Ministry Cannibal song, I Will Buy You a Drink. And they actually played Cannibal song at the club that night. Yeah.
Well, Cannibal songs are fun.
Yeah. And that's also that's Chris Conley on vocals on Cannibal song as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is an album from beginning to end that I'm kind of down with. And yeah, Dream Song was a great little instrumental outro. I'd love to hear more in that vein for sure.
Yeah,
all these things are bangers.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to one of Al's upcoming projects. Is he's a workaholic, and that's why he has so much material from not just his officially released albums, but a lot of material surrounding the making of the albums. So I'm really interested to hear what's out there when they do. Oh, and here's our 1989 outtakes, and kind of hear what is surrounding this.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, Chris Conley, lead vocals, tracks 3 and 4. So Never Believe and Cannibal song. Okay. Yeah. I love this album. What's your number one, George?
My number one is yeah, you got it. Land of Reap and Honey.
How did I guess?
How did you guess? Process of Elimination. So I got into Ministry because of Nine Inch Nails. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm like an over obsessed Nine Inch Nails fan.
We do need to cover them at some point.
Yeah. Trent always cited them as an influence. So, I've always like, and Skinny Puppy, got into Skinny Puppy immediately. So the first Ministry song that I heard was Reload, which was a radio single when it first came out, which it's kind of an odd song to play on the radio, but I did hear it on the radio. And then a friend let me borrow Filth Pig, which was the newest Ministry album at the time. I'm like, this sounds nothing like Nine Inch Nails. How could these guys have possibly influenced Nine Inch Nails? And it was just not my thing when I first heard it. I mean, I love it now. I've revisited it several times and kind of hearing the context of the other Ministry albums, it makes sense. But at the time, I was just like, I'm not into this at all. And then the next album I heard was this one. A friend let me borrow it. And then it's just all electronic, heavy beats. Not quite Pretty Hate Machine, but you can hear the influence that it had on Pretty Hate Machine. It's very dancey. There's a lot of synthesizer work. It has a lot of heavy moments. And I'm like, okay, I dig this. Like the first time I heard Stigmata in The Missing, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. I do like this. So I picked the CD up and played it quite a bit. And then when I was doing like the BMG Columbia House thing, where I may or may not have done that like 5 times over, got a bunch of free CDs. Yeah, I got some of the other ones like Psalm 69 and Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste and all of that. But this is the album that really got me into Ministry. And like Bob mentioned before, you can kind of hear a lot of the synth pop funky elements in this still, but you can kind of hear that modern Ministry sound kind of seeping into it. So for me, like if there's one album, that I would say sounds like Ministry or kind of encapsulates all of their different styles into one album, it would be this one.
I could see that.
Yeah. It's maybe not their most catchy, although, you know, like Stigmata is a pretty catchy song. But still there's a lot of experimentation. Like You Know What You Are has the the Clint Eastwood movie. Help me out, Bob. What's the big Clint Eastwood Western?
God damn it. Western?
It's at the tip of my tongue.
I mean, are you talking about Unforgiven or an older one?
It's around the same time. People are going to comment. It's like,
I think Unforgiven probably will have been about this time.
It's like, you idiot. How could you forget the title to that movie? It's a classic movie, but he yells, "You know what you are," to someone as they're leaving. And that then became the chorus to a song on here called "You Know What You Are." There's no chorus. It's just that Clint Eastwood sample screaming, "You know what you are." And I thought that was clever. You know, Al was experimenting and again, different vocal styles on here as well.
Oh, the good, bad, and ugly.
There you go. There you go. So, you know, using movie dialogue as verses or choruses was a fairly new thing. And, you know, and they're on a major label still, you know, ever since with Sympathy, they were on various major labels putting out music that was not really something that was mainstream appealing. Yeah. So, anyways.
Well, I mean, I was reading about how when I dove into this, I was reading about how essentially Ministry is considered, with the exception of Nine Inch Nails, Ministry has done more for industrial than any other band. It's like, I could see that.
Al Jurgensen is a very interesting character, especially some of his interviews. Somebody, it's like, so what does it mean to you to be like a godfather of like modern industrial music? And he's like, I never considered my music industrial. He's like, ZZ Top uses synthesizers and sequencers, but nobody calls them industrial, was his response.
True. But yeah, they're not as hard hitting at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so. I've never thought about connecting ZZ Top and Ministry. They're really the same band, guys.
But that's what's funny about a lot of industrial artists. You know, like Trent Reznor doesn't consider Nine Inch Nails really industrial, and Skinny Puppy's like, oh, it's just a label they gave us. And you know, I guess to be industrial, you must not consider yourself industrial.
Yeah, if you consider yourself industrial, you lose credit. Sorry, you're right. I think of myself as industrial. You're not.
But yes, this was a pivotal album for the genre, for sure. And for me, like, I think this is one of their catchiest albums for also being one of their more experimental ones. I think Al Jurgensen even said this was his favorite Ministry album.
I could see that. This is fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I've talked a lot of nerdy Ministry fun facts.
Good. One of us knows a lot about Ministry because they're the headliner, and I kind of just dove in. And
but you are
quite a bit. But yeah,
you are right, Bob. It's you get to a certain point where you kind of lose a lot as you're going along. Like, you really like it, you really appreciate it, but like there's certain high points that you just don't quite, you know, you get to. And like, you know, I agree, like Mine / Psalm 69 they never quite reach that that same level. They come close several times. And I do love the latest 2 albums.
The latest 3.
Yeah, I mean, that one's just okay for me, Bob. I know you really like it, but Amerikkant's just okay. Yeah.
I like the latest 3, but yeah, like I said, coming off of From Beer to Eternity, I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, like listening through Beer to Eternity, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to listen to another one of these.
So I'm really hoping he does the early years tour.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. Absolutely.
And he's also, for the longest time, like he had such a terrible experience making with Sympathy that he refused to sign it for several years.
Really?
Yeah. And only recently that he's like, well, if you donate like $1,000 to charity, I'll sign the album. That's how much. It's not he didn't hate the music, because obviously he's revisiting it, but he just did not care for the label. Like he didn't care for their creative direction, you know. But he's now signing again on the VIP thing. If you have a VIP pass for this tour, and you bring With Sympathy in, he'll sign it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Which is interesting. But I'm interested. Yeah. And I want to see like what songs he picks for this new early years release coming up, like what songs he wants to revisit. And then oh, go ahead.
I was just looking the Ministry, the band listed with as people listed as the band for Ministry with Sympathy were Al Jurgensen and Stephen George. And Stephen George, this is his one album with the band.
Yeah, so Stephen George was actually the drummer from the very first release in 81, which was Cold Life, all the way up until 1984. And then a couple of the songs on Twitch he played drums on as well. So he was kind of the original drummer for about 4 or 5 years.
And he also worked with Rick Ocasek around this time too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, from the Cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, another fun fact is With Sympathy was recorded at the Cars studio.
That's very cool.
So a lot of that stuff was done during off hours. I think Al Jurgensen even worked on some of that, and they did some stuff with Alan Vega from Suicide.
That is very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited for that. And, you know, we might get more into the early years stuff if they do a proper tour
for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like I said, like, I feel like there's a lot musically Al still has to learn with Sympathy, but like the songs are catchy and fun, and I don't have a term for it other than like there's a charm to the album that is super infectious when you're listening to it. Just like, oh my god, this is awesome.
Yeah, he hasn't quite developed, you know, what his actual sound is, but he wrote a ton of good songs during that period. I mean, there's some goofy ones, you know, like What He Say is kind of a goofy song, but I mean, there's some really cool songs, especially on the box set that I mentioned, that you're like, oh wow, this is, some of the songs are even better than what was put out on With Sympathy. But I'm also looking forward to the tour and album with Paul Barker, just kind of getting one last album in.
Tour going on there.
Yeah. So, like I said, if they end up doing 2 different tours for those 2 different projects, I'd be totally down for doing each one. Like we could.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like if the Paul Barker one ends up being the last one, I think that's a great time to do the full album ranking and maybe listen to From Beer to Eternity again.
Yeah, we'll do the last one. Will be the full ranking, and then the early years one we'll mainly focus on
the
stuff,
the early years, and maybe like some of the stuff he's revisited throughout the years too. But like Ricky's Hand. Yeah, I was looking it up actually, and I guess like essentially the main set list we saw like before the encore is pretty much set. Like every show, that's the set list, and then like the encore seems to change and alternate between 2 different songs, and one of them is Ricky's Hand.
I know. I was looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah,
that was
So What was fun too. It seemed like it's either going to be Ricky's Hand or So What for the second encore song.
Yeah, so their version of Ricky Hand goes back to like I think 1984, which was the tour, like the Wax Tracks collection that we were talking about. They did a tour for that, which at the time, Every Day is Halloween was a new song, and All Day, and you know they played Ricky's Hand during that tour. That's also the tour that they played Hisbala, which later showed up on Land of Raven Honey.
Yeah.
You know, they played some of the With Sympathy songs, and they, you know, had a few other really cool songs that were kind of unreleased, and they came out on that box set like 10 years ago. you know, but some of those songs are really cool. But yeah, definitely interested to see what the early year stuff is all about next year.
Absolutely.
And then
well, I don't know if it'll be next year. Did he say it'd be next year? I wasn't expecting it quite.
He said it's coming out next year. Now, whether or not the tour happens at the same time, you know, is anyone's guess. But
yeah,
they'll be doing it. I don't know if they're doing a full set or not, but they're playing at the Crew World Festival, which is new wave artists like the Simple Minds are going to be playing.
Oh wow!
Soft Cell is going to be there. Heaven 17, Duran Duran is headlining.
Damn.
A good group of bands, like, you know, a lot of the well-known new wave kind of legacy bands from the 80s. So, but Ministry is going, and they're specifically only playing songs from With Sympathy and Twitch at the festival.
That's awesome.
So if they do a full set, that should give us an idea of what to expect from a tour. So,
well, even if they don't do a full set, we should at least be able to get like hints of what they're going to do, you know?
Yeah, we'll at least have like, okay, they're going to definitely play these 6 songs, you know, in an earlier show.
But yeah, I think that sums up this podcast. But next week, normal time Monday, we'll be covering Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, Roadhouse 2024 with Jake Gyllenhaal, and X-Men Season 3 episodes 1 through 10. Yeah, that should be fun. And we'll probably talk a bit about Horror Hound too. It'll be good fun. But yes, that'll be Monday at 7:00, and then Eastern Standard Time, and then I got my normal stream on Thursday. That'll be at 5:00 Eastern Standard Time, and Initiative stream, yeah, that's gonna be tomorrow. I think 3 p.m. on that one Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, I got plenty of stuff coming out, guys. So yeah, party on. Be excellent to each other. I need to remember how to operate this though. Here we go.